Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Crystal Palace on Sunday, and I am delighted to be joined once again by Dan, betterly known as HLTCO over on Twitter. Dan, how is oneself?
I'm all good, mate. Yeah, just getting on busy end of the season and starting to feel a bit happier about our place in the Premier League after the win against Liverpool at the weekend.
I was about to say, you must be, are you riding a high after that win at Anfield?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you all know whenever you're a mid-table Premier League side, and I appreciate Palace and West Ham are at slightly different levels because of your recent European success and the size of the fan base, etc. But the best wins for me are always the unexpected ones. You know, you can go into big games, but if you go into a big game almost expecting to get the victory, it doesn't quite hit the same. And going there to Anfield, you know, there was that sort of wounded beast theory after they lost to Atalanta. You're sort of thinking, you know, are they going to come out of the traps and absolutely annihilate us? But instead, you know, I think in many ways, the opening sort of weeks of Oliver Glasner's time in charge, you've seen a lot of the foundations being laid, but we haven't necessarily got the rewards for it. And to play the way we did against Liverpool, to keep a clean sheet, I think we're the first team who's beaten them in the league at Anfield this season. And on top of that, it puts us 8 points clear of the bottom three. So it was just a perfect weekend, really.
Right then, big manager change for you not too long ago. Obviously, it was going to happen in the summer. You've just effectively brought it forward because of Roy Hodgson, but Glasner's come in. What do you make of his appointment and how he's got on so far?
I think, you know, I've said it numerous times over the last couple of months on my own pod and whenever people have asked me, for a club like us to be able to attract a Europa League winning manager as recently as 2022, when we were in the midst of a relegation battle, where the team were struggling under Roy Hodgson for fluency, I think it, one, shows the level that the Premier League is and the pulling power that the division has, but also, you know, you look at the players that we've got and the potential of this squad, and I think he has probably seen that if he is given a fair run of things for 18, 24 months, maybe even longer, he can really start to build something quite exciting. You know, we had many people saying to us, well, you're Crystal Palace, what is it you expect? You know, what more can you possibly hope for than finishing 13th or 12th every year? And my whole thing at the end of Roy Hodgson's second spell was, you know, it's not a case of just being happy in the Premier League. You want to feel invigorated. You want to feel as though there is a long-term plan. You want to feel as though the players are enjoying their football. And that wasn't happening. You know, it wasn't a case of anyone feeling hard done by with Roy. We all understand the way that he works and, you know, the positives that he brought back when he came the second time. He brought stability to us. When he first stepped in to take over from Frank de Boer, he stabilised us hugely. But it had gone stale. You know, there's no way around that. And the change was coming, as you've mentioned, at the end of this season anyway. This is the first time Oliver Glasner's ever taken a job on mid-season. But I think, you know, what he wants to do from a tactical perspective is get us playing high-energy football with a higher press, trying to win turnovers in the opposition half, being generally fitter. I think it's fair to say we were not a particularly fit group at the end of Roy Hodgson's reign. And, you know, we have seen the building blocks over the last few weeks. The performance against Manchester City was good, but obviously they did what they can do to anyone and blew us away in sort of a 20-minute spell at the beginning of the second half. But then to go to Anfield straight after that and perform the way we did, particularly in the first half, you know, we had numerous chances to score. Mateta had one cleared off the line. There were other opportunities, and we were really playing with an active press, which I just didn't think we would be able to do against the side of their quality. And it just felt very much like, you know, the coming together of all the pieces of the puzzle.
In regards to your season overall, taken into the first bit under Roy Hodgson, are you happy enough, or is it a case of it's been a bit of a boring season, but like you said, there's maybe some promises on the horizon going into next year?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, obviously, it sounds defeatist, but for a club of our stature, the first aim every single season has to be getting the points on the board to remain in the Premier League. And with this victory last weekend, we pretty much done that, albeit not mathematically yet. But, you know, we were treading water. There is no other way of saying it. Under Roy Hodgson, I think it was quite clear that the board, with Wilfried Zaha's departure, with, you know, a general, not malaise, but there was a sense of a need for stability and sort of keeping ourselves on a steady and even keel for a full campaign. But I think you're always going to struggle to keep the fan base fully on side when that's quite clearly the modus operandi for a whole 12-month spell. And, you know, the decision to bring Roy back in the first place was one which didn't go down particularly well it was tempered hugely by the fact that we suddenly started playing really free-flowing stuff with Elise and Eze at the back end of last season. But then to bring him back for a full campaign when he'd already semi-retired once before and left, it just felt like there wasn't a real long-term plan in place. And then for us to go out and get a manager like Glasner, to bring him in and pretty much say to him, come the summer, there are going to be a couple of high-profile sales. We all know this, but you can sculpt the team in your own image, and we can try and put a number of round pegs in round holes rather than trying to mend and make do in the fashion that we have for the last few years. I think it's just a very exciting time. Obviously, pride comes before a fall. I'm not suggesting that everything's going to work out and we're going to rocket up the table, but there is a palpable sense of anticipation for a little bit more enjoyment next year. Maybe not having to worry at all about a relegation battle, maybe a cup run to a quarter final, a couple of games you win 3 or 4-0. It's not as though we expect the moon on a stick. We just want to enjoy going to Selhurst Park every other week, and hopefully that's what he brings across the next year or two.
Yeah, the appointment of Glasner is the first time I felt in ages that Crystal Palace have made a really good appointment here. With Roy coming back the second time, I personally didn't get it, and to be fair, he did better than I thought he would, just keeping you up. The Vieira one, I felt there was a large element of risk there. Now, he did well, and I was impressed with what he did in his first season. I still think he would have turned it around before he got sacked, but there was an element of risk. Again, you had Roy for a while before that. De Boer was obviously a shambles, but this Glasner one, yeah, it made me. I also pay attention. It's one of them I look at. It's like your signing of Adam Wharton in January. It's like, hang on a minute, this is good business by Crystal Palace over there. And actually, somebody I would have liked at West Ham next season, should we decide to move on David Moyes while he was unemployed. I thought I wouldn't mind him at West Ham. And then when you went and got him, there's one of the guys I wouldn't have minded off the short list. But what's your hopes for next season then? Because you've got the manager, and obviously there might be 1 or 2 players leaving. But you've still got a hugely, even if you were to take away who you think, whoever's watching this, take away Crystal Palace's best player in your opinion, you've still got a core of really young, talented individuals here in defence, midfield and in attack. So what's your hopes for Crystal Palace next season?
Well, I mean, if you look at the realistic situation, we all know that Michael Elise, and it's one of those weird sort of dynamics for a club like us, because obviously we want to be ambitious, we want to keep hold of our best players, but sometimes, as you've experienced with Declan Rice, Paqueta as well at the moment, there's a lot of rumours about him potentially leaving. Sometimes you cannot satisfy the ambitions of those players because they are simply that good and the time is right for them to move on. I think Michael Elise is quite clearly one of those individuals. He came very close to leaving at the back end of last season. We managed to pull that back from the brink, and he signed a new deal with an improved release clause in it. No one's quite sure of the exact number that release clause is, but I think there are probably going to be a queue of top clubs that are ready to pay that and sign him, and it's up to him where he goes. There's also a lot of speculation about Mark Gay. I think if he does regain full fitness between now and the end of the season, will definitely be a part of the England squad for the Euros. I have full faith in him if he does play in those games, doing himself all sorts of favours in the eyes of people, because we know how good he is at Crystal Palace, but there is still this sense of, is he actually that good? He is a top defender, and someone that for me is Champions League ready right now. So I think you can probably look at those two and say they are likely sales. But even with that, you've mentioned, you've got 2 extremely solid goalkeepers in Sam Johnston and Dean Henderson, Joachim Anderson and Chris Richards in the centre of defence. Tyreek Mitchell's come on leaps and bounds under Oliver Glasner. You've got Daniel Munoz, who's come in on the right-hand side of the defence. Chet Decore's been out since November, and he's been fantastic for us since the day that he signed, really. And the prospect of him, Jefferson Lerma and Adam Wharton in the middle of the park is mouthwatering, to be quite honest. John Felipe Mateta looks a different man completely. You've still got a Eze. So there's all sorts of different, combinations that you can go with. And obviously, if you do bring in, say, 100 million to 120 million for those 2 players, which I don't think is outlandish at all, then you can potentially look to bring in 5, 6, maybe even 7 genuinely quality squad players, particularly when you consider the way that we've gone about our recruitment in recent years, going into the Championship and signing players like Michael Elise for £8 million, Eze for 15 or 16. There are so many options out there. Even Adam Wharton, we spent £20 million on him, give or take. And already that looks like a drop in the ocean, really, when you consider how well he's adapted. So I would imagine with 90 to 100 million pounds in the transfer war chest, then Dougie Freedman can really go to town and make us a far more solid overall side and try to build a team that actually works with the tactical identity that Oliver Glasner wants, because it has been a bit of a case of Roy Hodgson knows what he wants to do, but you're never really sure how you're going to attack teams. Oliver Glasner has said himself he wants to win every single game of football, whether that means sitting in a low block and counter-attacking or whether it means trying to dictate play. He will adapt depending on the opponent. And I think that in itself is something that's got a lot of Crystal Palace fans very infused for the next 12 to 18 months.
League position wise, what would you be? I know there's a long way to go and there's a lot of transfers, but just give me a bit of a vibe. What you feel? Is top half? Is that what you're aiming for, or is it just more enjoyable football in 14th and above? Or
I would have thought, I mean, obviously you don't want to make some sort of bold proclamation. It's not like we've just beaten Liverpool and I'm saying we're going to qualify for Europe. It's obviously a steady thing. But I think top half has to be the aspiration. I think we've either finished 10th once in our entire time in the Premier League, or maybe 11th was the top. Definitely not above 10th. I could be misremembering whether or not it was 10th or 11th, but that's sort of the highest point we've had since 2013 when we won promotion via the playoffs. So I think Oliver Glasner has spoken about it. You know, we have a ceiling, but it's about establishing that as not the base, but as the norm, and trying to grow the mentality of the football club. You know, he said, I don't want to come here and not improve it. And, you know, he doesn't want to finish 15th every year. And it's up to us to match his ambition. I don't think he's necessarily talking about, you know, the Antonio Conte spend or I'm leaving scenario, but he certainly wants to see the football club strive for something more. And that is a very refreshing change when you compare it to Roy Hodgson, who, I'm not blaming him for this at all. You know, he's a man in his mid-70s. He's been around the block numerous times, but he was always pragmatism and safety first. And after a while, it just sort of leaves you with a dissipated sense of enthusiasm for what you're going to watch every week, because it feels like football by numbers. Whereas the unpredictability of, you know, you might score 3 or 4 goals, you might concede a couple, but it could be a little bit more free-flowing. I'm not suggesting it's Alan Pardew and it's, you know, all hands to the pump and it's chaos. But the fact that there is more of a desire to be expansive and attacking is certainly something that we're all enjoying a great deal at the moment.
Love that. Right, from your team to my team then, what do you make of West Ham?
It's a strange scenario, isn't it? I was on, this isn't even a plug for James Alcott's podcast, but I was on a podcast with him a couple of months ago, and we were talking about whether football fans are spoilt. And West Ham came up in conversation. And I said, as far as I'm concerned, and this is something I've said on numerous occasions, not in relation to West Ham specifically, but football supporters generally, if people outside of a football club talk to a set of fans and say, oh, you want to be careful what you wish for, you don't know you're born, it's all well and good seeing a league position and saying, well, they've qualified for Europe 3 years on a spin, they've won a European trophy, what more do they expect? Because what someone who is emotionally detached from something is seeing are the pure results. You know, you can look at it with Crystal Palace as a prime example. We are not historically a top flight club, and we have been here for over a decade. So to your average Liverpool fan in the street, Villa fan in the street, whoever it might be, they'll look at that and think, well, what more do you want? But there is this element of you want to strive for something greater. Now, I'm not trying to do down David Moyes at all. I think it's a nuanced conversation, but I certainly understand why there are growing numbers of West Ham fans that feel as though they want something a little bit more invigorating from week to week. You know, you can look at the be-all and end-all that is qualification for the latter stages of the European competition, top half of the league, and maybe, you know, that is as good as it's going to get for you. But at the same time, you know, you've moved to this new stadium, you've got a huge fan base, and there are players there that, if they are put in a cohesive tactical system, should be able to qualify for Europe every year, or at least be in the conversation. So I do understand it, and I am always wary of, you know, talking down a fan base and saying, well, you know, just be quiet and just calm down, because you're the ones that are paying your money and watching it every week. You're the ones that are living and breathing every single kick, and you're the ones that will know the true upper ceiling of that group. Whether or not it's a little bit, you know, outlandish, that's obviously an individual by individual thing. But I certainly, I don't subscribe to the notion that West Ham fans should just sort of sit in a corner and be quiet because David Moyes has delivered them a European trophy.
Love that. And that's going to go down. That's 2 weeks in advance now. We our Fulham fan had a similar outlook as well, and that went down very well. So I think that's 2 weeks in advance now. Subscribers are going to be happy with that type of answer. But from the unemotional view, from looking at West Ham results wise, we're 8th in the Premier League, quarter-final European Cup. And for people watching right now, we're recording this on Wednesday, so we don't know the outcome of the game against Leverkusen just yet. But from the unemotional, detached view, how do you think our season's gone?
I think it's always difficult with West Ham because, I look at players, Paqueta, Jared Bowen, you could reel off Kudus. There's so much quality there that even in a game like this one at Selhurst on Sunday, you'll be coming off the back of 2 grueling legs against Bayer Leverkusen. I think, I don't think I'm being extreme here in suggesting that they'll probably get through. They've been such a fantastic side. They're 2-0 up. That in terms of game management, they're probably the best in Europe at the moment. And even if you look at it and, they might have a bit of hangovers emotionally and physically from their celebrations following their title win, they're still going to be desperate to make sure they continue on this unbeaten run, because why would you want to let go of that? So, if you look at the first leg and the 33 shots, I think it was to 1, the way they managed that, the fact that you've lost to Fulham in between, it's not a fantastic time for West Ham. And that's why I'm always a little bit wary of just saying, well, you're 8th, you're in a European quarter-final. That's all that matters. Because, I remember looking at it from a social media perspective. I think it was Liverpool you played in the League Cup this season, and he rotated the side heavily at Anfield. And there were plenty of West Ham fans saying, why are you doing that? This is a legitimate opportunity for us to go there and potentially catch them cold, get into the latter stages of a cup competition. Now, he's looking at it from a squad management point of view, David Moyes, and thinking that's the right thing to do. But it's a little bit of that daring do that comes with football management sometimes. And I say this a lot, the modern era of a football manager, yes, it's about putting a team out that can be cohesive on a Saturday, but it's also PR. A lot of it is PR. You are the figurehead of an organisation that has the hopes and dreams of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in its hands every week. And with that in mind, sometimes you have to do things and say things that don't necessarily subscribe to your internal views. Maybe it's, moulding it a little bit and trying to package something in a little bit of a more fan-friendly way. But I just feel like sometimes David Moyes misreads the room. I think he looks at the success that he's had, and quite rightly from his personal point of view, he might feel that way. But in terms of keeping West Ham fans on side, it could just be handled better as far as I'm concerned.
If you were a West Ham fan, difficult to imagine this hypothetical situation, I know, but if you were a West Ham fan in regards to David Moyes' summer, would you want to stick or twist?
Right now, I would say twist. I think it depends. Obviously, it's highly unlikely that you come back on Thursday and get past Leverkusen. But if you do that, then all of a sudden, the sort of recency bias of football fandom will shift. You'll be into another European semi-final. I think at that point, he would be well within his rights to say, well, hang on, I've won you a European trophy last season. We've just got past an unbeaten Leverkusen side. We've overturned a 2-goal deficit. We're into another semi-final. We're still 8th in the Premier League. He would have a more serious case, even if it is just a single 90 minutes of football, to say, what more are you going to get with someone else? Yeah. So right now, with it looking incredibly unlikely, I would say twist. But if you do somehow manage to overcome them on Thursday, then I think the entire thing flips once again. Because from a PR point of view as an outward club, you are going to struggle with the blowback of parting ways with David Moyes, because everyone will have the knives out for you as a football club for treating someone that has won you a trophy and got you into the last 4 of the Europa League in such a fashion.
Yeah, look forward to Alan Shearer's reaction if we did that. He won't be happy with West Ham, that's for sure. Right, let's turn our attentions to Selhurst Park on Sunday. Obviously, this is a little bit of a difficult one because we don't know how West Ham have gone, because obviously if we somehow beat Leverkusen 3-0, you might think, I don't really fancy this on Sunday now. But at the moment, at the time of recording, Dan, what are you thinking about Sunday afternoon?
I think, and this is in many ways, it's like a long-term hangover that I've had from Roy Hodgson, because you never really went into a game expecting to win. I don't ever really expect Crystal Palace to win, but I have genuine hope of us winning this one for a number of reasons, really. One, we will have had a full week of recovery from the game at Anfield. That's huge, a full 7 days. Two, the players will be buoyant because, we've won 1-0. It's a huge win for a whole multitude of reasons that I've already, disclosed on the podcast already. Even down to the sort of intangibles, like the fact that on Match of the Day 2, they spent roughly 5 or 6 minutes just bigging up our players. That in itself is something that the players as individuals will have seen. And I'm sure, having not had that for the last 12 to 18 months in a national media sense, they will feel invigorated by that. You throw in West Ham's last couple of weeks, even if you do manage to come back against Leverkusen, it's fair to suggest it will have taken a hell of a lot out of you. You'll be playing on 3 days rest. You've lost to Fulham in the middle of those 2 games. And then you've got to roll into Selhurst, either euphoric but absolutely physically exhausted, or physically exhausted and also down in the dumps having gone out. So there's a lot of positives for me going into this game on home turf. But then again, pride does come before a fall, and potentially you will come and ruin the party.
And the good thing is with Palace West Ham, there's always a banger. There's always a really good goal whenever we play you. It's never just tap-ins. Someone's always got to do something. I've seen Jordan Ayew turn into Messi against West Ham recent seasons.
That Andy Carroll goal from a few years back haunts me. That scissor kick volley. I just don't know how he pulled it out.
Dimitri Payet's free kick when Alan Pardew had a 10-man wall, and he still managed to bend it round. He defied physics.
Wayne Hennessy was in goal that day. I just highlight that fact.
Doesn't normally have an issue putting his arm up in the air unless it's defending free kicks. Risky joke insert into the podcast. Anyway, right then, Dan, can I get a score prediction, please, for Sunday afternoon?
I'll tell you what I'll say. 3-2 Palace. I think it will be a lively fixture that will probably be a bit no holds barred, and maybe the sort of old frailties of Crystal Palace will come back, but we might just get over the line, I think.
Well, 5 goals, we're surely going to be treated to at least one banger in that 5 goals as well. There's a good probability with that yield of goals. Anyway, Dan, thank you so much for joining me. Much appreciate it as always, especially because I know you've got a busy week and weekend coming up, so I appreciate it a lot. If you guys at home have enjoyed it, please do drop a like on the video, subscribe to Hammers Chat. And if you would like to see more from Dan, please do check out his profiles. I put the links to his social media below. And also he has a Patreon where he uploads daily talking about football, not just Crystal Palace, football generally as well. So even if you're just a football fan, you can still and should go subscribe to Dan on Patreon. I'll put the links in the description below and the pinned comments of this video. But until next time, well, hopefully next season, myself and Dan will catch up with you then.